They
Real
it's
quick, I'm
funny.
gonna let this
It's
guy up real quick because this guy keeps chirping, and I'm just gonna destroy what he has to say real quick.
oh okay.
And he's been getting jumped by my chat. He was up earlier. Hey, before I could bring up Jay, guys, don't forget to hit my fiance a follow, Peace Apologetics on TikTok. She's not here right now, but also her YouTube is in my bio, so make sure you hit her a sub as well. Help her get her subs up because very, 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 very soon her content will be coming out on YouTube as well. So, Jay, what's up, man? What argument you got? And if you're gonna bring an argument, let's be objective. Let's put our feelings to the side. Bring something that's objective.
Facts. I agree with that, man. I don't, contrary to what it appears like, I don't come here with bad intent, man. I just want to learn. I just want to ask my questions, see what you feel. That's it. Um, as far as the Bible goes, you know, you the origins of it, they it bothers me. You know, it's a human being, like you said earlier, and I just don't trust humans. You understand what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
that alone is a core bad, you know, thing that automatically takes away a lot for me. You know, because even back then, curious humans existed. You understand what I'm saying? But
So if Jesus Christ is who he said he is, and if he is God incarnated in the flesh, and he affirms the Torah, then that would be if you believe that he is God incarnated, then that would be a legitimate reason why to accept the Torah, regardless of how it makes you feel. Would you agree?
that's if, like you said, I
Okay.
agree with that.
Okay, so now let's tackle that. Now, my question to you is, there is something called the Shroud of Turin. Have you looked into it?
Yeah, I even seen David Will talk about it and a bunch of other people, and they said it's not real. I don't know. What do you
No,
think?
it is. What do you mean? It is real. It's
Well,
100% real.
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. Like, I'm
Yeah,
open
even
to hearing
scientists
what
would
you got
admit
to say.
the Shroud of Turin. If you don't know what it is, it's the shroud that covered Jesus' body after when he
When
was
he died,
buried,
yeah,
and
facts.
then when he rose again, it was left behind, and it has an imprint on it
Yeah,
of
I
his
heard about
face.
that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, it's been scientifically studied for the past like 50 years, and there was a point in time due to a flawed scientific study, they purposely flawed it, back in the late 80s in order to say that it was fake. It was not. It was a fraudulent shroud. But ever since then, there was more studies, and it was proven that that study, which came from Oxford, was actually incorrect. And Oxford actually recanted back and said, no, it was actually a fraudulent study. It was actually incorrect. That it is a real shroud from the first century from Jerusalem at the time period as to when they said Jesus was crucified. So the question is, scientifically, how do you explain this imprint on the cloth? Because it's not something somebody could have forged at that time, especially in the details and what they find scientifically on it. The radiation that caused that imprint on the cloth, we can't even recreate it today. Like, we can't even do it
Mm,
ourselves. So how would
mm.
that be done in the first century?
Honestly, you know, that's a good question. You got me there, right? I haven't done the research. I gotta like take time and do that. I will take what you said into account, right? That
Okay.
is something incredible, right? If that's the case, but to me, that still just shows, let's say, a man who got covered, right? And you could see the cover, and maybe that proves that man existed. But the metaphysical aspects of, you know, that scenario, that situation, that
Well,
doesn't
hold
get
on a second.
necessarily proven, you know?
Well, if now I know you're not. I'm going to say if. I'm not going to misrepresent you and say you do believe this, but assuming you do the research and I'm correct on everything I say, if I am right and that shroud is something that is true, that has the radiation and everything, how do you explain that shroud other than a resurrection, other than he actually resurrected?
Well, I mean, I, I'm just being in the middle on it, man. I don't want you to think I'm coming at it with an angle. I'm just being honest here. I don't see how, even if that was him wrapped in the shroud, does that mean that he
I
was a?
understand that. Why though?
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, because at the end of the day, it goes back to my core problem with scripture. I have to trust a human being. You
Brother,
understand?
the thing is, if this is true, then that means the account that the Christians made are also true. Now they are proven to be credible. And if he is God incarnated who resurrected, who experienced death and then resurrected, this would be physical scientific evidence of the resurrection, then that means if he affirms the Torah, the scriptures that you have a problem with, now we have good reasons to accept it regardless of your feelings towards it.
No, I hear that, right? But my problem with that is that finding a shroud, right? I could find what you got wrapped in after you died, right? That tells me you existed for sure. Like that means you were here. But it does not mean that whatever else was claimed. It's like, oh, it ends at he was here, he existed. You know, this is a shroud.
But where's his body? It was his dead. It was wrapped around his dead body, dude. Where's the body? Where's the body? And how do you explain the imprint of his face, of his body on that cloth?
No, this is what I'm saying. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say something about it. Yeah, because what it sounds like. What's your name, bro? You said your name's Jay.
Jay.
I'm on TikTok, so I can't see your name.
Yeah, no doubt. My name is Jay. How you doing, champ?
Jay. Okay, I'm good, man. It sounds like what you're saying is you want some type of exact certainty of a reason as to why you should trust in Christianity. And I'm just speaking in a general sense, because this could be about any religion, but you're looking for something that's going to give you a certainty as to why I should trust this religion. Am I understanding you correctly?
Kinda. And you know, I'm also looking for the balance between science, because I do feel like whatever science claims, I'm a big believer in science and what they present forward. And I feel like whatever is the absolute truth has to be something that aligns with what we see.
That's why I brought up the shroud.
Science.
Because he's a science guy.
No, yeah, I'm gonna use the shroud, but I want to tackle his epistemology first, because, and I'm not trying to use big words to sound fancy. This is just like what the word is called, but epistemology basically means it's the study of, for lack of a better word, the study of why you believe what you believe, right? Like how you can how you can have that certainty in what you believe, your worldview, how you know that something is true. It's the tools that you use to understand the world around you, okay? So right now, your epistemology it's rooted in science, but it's also, everything is not verifiable through science. How we use our reasoning is through something which we call inductive and deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is like, okay, like I have a really good idea that something is true based on a bunch of different types of evidence. Therefore, I'm going to believe that this is true because there's not a lot of evidence that goes against all of the other evidence for something. And then there's deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is you have absolute truth that this is true. Like there's no amount of evidence that can prove it false. And there are things like that. Like for instance, if I say, in this book in front of me, it is deductively true that every word in it is written in black ink. I can literally go through that book and prove that, like deductively. But if I say there's a book in front of me and I believe that every word in it is written in black ink because every book in this same series has been written in black ink. Well, if I go through the book, then maybe there's one word written in blue or something like that. So that's the difference between inductive and deductive reasoning. The reason I'm explaining all of this to you is because it's going to hit on what Bear is saying here. When we're looking at evidence or when we're looking at what to believe, it's always going to be inductive. I'm going to say that one more time. When we're looking at things to believe, worldviews, they will always be inductive. They'll never be deductive. And I'm going to prove it. We're going to start with something that is less serious than religion. We're going to start with something like driving. Do you drive to work like Monday through Friday or whatever?
No, I live very close to my job, walking distance.
Okay. Let's use walking then, okay? Let's say it takes you 10 minutes to get to your job. And let's say you go to work tomorrow and you say, hey, your boss calls you and say, hey, can you come in, 5 minutes early tomorrow because, something is happening, da, 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 da. So then you make your plans so that you can come in 5 minutes early. Well, in the past, he's done this a lot. So you're used to him asking you to come in early. But this day in particular, when you wake up to go in early, you get a call from a family member and say, hey, such and such is sick. I need you to do da 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 da. So then you call
Yeah.
your boss back and you say, hey, I can't come in early today because of X, Y, and Z. Now, when you told your boss that you were going to come in 5 minutes early, when you told your boss that you were going to come in 5 minutes early, you did that based on what? And this is a question. It's not a hypothetical or whatever. I'm just asking you a question. Like
No,
when you
I
told
see
your
the
boss
logic.
that you'd be able to come in 5 minutes early, you said that based on what?
I said that based on deductive reasoning on my situation,
No,
right?
that would be inductive.
And
No,
inductive,
inductive. Because
That's what I
inductive,
meant. That's what I meant. My bad. Like
yep,
that's literally
right.
what I meant. My fault. Like I meant
No, it's
inductive,
cool. It's
like
cool. You
the
you
one
did that
where
based
you
on
can't
inductive
prove it.
reasoning.
Yeah,
Exactly. Because everything in the past has conditioned your mind to understanding that this most likely is something that
that I
I'll
could
be
do.
able to do.
Exactly. Yeah, I get you.
But you don't know that 100% sure, but that's how we live our life. Every decision we make, because we don't know the future, is based on induction. Now, now I'm finally getting to the point. How does this relate to what Bear is explaining to you with the Shroud of Turin or with anything else where religion is concerned? That is also going to be induction because nobody's ever seen God. Nobody's ever come back from the dead and said, hey, look, Christianity is true. Well, we do have accounts and stuff like that, but those would be anecdotal to an extent based on their personal experience because they can't prove that to you personally. But everything about God is going to be inductive. However, that doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. Why? Because that's how we live our life. So if we're talking about good reasons to believe in the God of Christianity, they're going to be inductive, just like you'll try to find reasons not to believe in the God of Christianity. However, where induction is concerned in this particular case is always going to be stronger than atheism or only believing in science or Islam or whatever other worldview. And we can give you extremely good reasons to believe that Christianity is true. And if you're going to be consistent, then you would continue to believe, you would use the same methods that you use to believe in everything else towards Christianity, and you would realize that, hey, this Jesus guy, he's most likely the truth. Because even if I say something like science, because you said you're a science guy,
Yeah.
can you tell me how much logic weighs?
I mean, I would guess it weighs just as much as any other thought does, right? We store thoughts in our brain. I don't know exactly what form it's held
So
in, but
thoughts,
maybe it's
so so
chemical.
so
But
thoughts, yeah, so thoughts and the laws of logic and things like love, they have weight. You can put them on a scale and weigh them.
well, I mean, their emotions, right? They're processes of the brain. They're things we feel due to the nerve endings in our brain. Like it's our physical composition allows us to feel that. Any brain damage that stops that would not allow us to feel that. I don't really know everything about the brain.
But that's how
I'm
we have the thoughts. That doesn't tell us how
Yeah,
much it weighs. Like
that's the
they're not
mechanism. Right,
empirical. Like you can't. They're not tangible. Thoughts are
right. That's
not.
the
They're abstract.
like I know you
right.
can't
That's
touch
the
them,
mechanism.
but
The brain is the mechanism in which you use to utilize thoughts and logic and love. Basically, what so the thing I'm getting at here is science is not end all be all because science works on the scientific method. But the problem with the scientific method is it is only accounting for things based on an empirical sense. But you can't empirically prove things like the laws of logic. Like it's not like it's demonstrable, but it's not empirical in the same aspect as something like trees or cars or things that are material. These things are metaphysical. They exist, but they exist in a different way. So if you believe in things like the laws of logic, love, things that are not physical, and you believe in them the exact same way you believe in things that are physical, then why would you not believe in God that's not physical?
Well, because you know,
Can you
we
get closer
can
to your mic,
detect.
Jay? Because you're
Oh,
kind of
I,
low.
apologize. Um, because like we could test certain forces, right? I mean, like when people say gravity is something that to this day we create things and new technology and all kinds of things based
Have you
on
seen it?
our under well, yeah, satellites, internet, GPS.
You've seen
It's
gravity?
no. I like not as a substance, an object, but what I mean is science. Like that's how we can send up airplanes. That's how we can send up satellites. That's how we do actual things that we do is due to our understanding of gravity. If gravity wasn't what we said it was or worked the way we said it does, then our technological advancements would not have held up. You understand what I'm saying? Because it's truly, literally, quite literally based on our understanding of gravity that we could keep a satellite up there, to make the internet, for
Gotcha.
example, have a phone.
Gotcha. So gravity is not something that you can actually physically touch. You can't see it. It is something that, in a sense, is metaphysical, but you believe that it's real based on induction, right? And the reason why I say induction is because gravity doesn't work the same way everywhere. It's not a
Yeah,
universal.
no, it's based on it's based on its gravitational pull to its to the thing that has the strongest gravitational pull. Basically, that's
Exactly.
how
Exactly.
gravity
So
works. We get pulled down to the earth.
exactly.
That's yeah,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
how
So
that
that's the
works.
point that I'm making. Right, but
Yeah,
but 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 that's the point that I'm making. Not everything that is physical. So, for instance, basically what I'm saying is, if it's physical, that doesn't mean that things that are not physical don't exist.
nah,
Metaphysical things exist too, and you just gave
I
a good
know.
example: gravity.
Yeah,
Right. So
oxygen,
so so
everything.
so. Right.
That's not
So exactly.
metaphysical.
So
It's oxygen. It's gravity. It's not metaphysical. It's something that's not
yeah,
physical, but
yeah,
it's not a
but
solid object. You know what I mean?
yeah, but that's the point that I'm making. Like, using the scientific method, you can find some ways to make it make sense. You can find some ways to see that this thing itself is real, but you can't prove. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I'm refuting materialism. Like, just because you can't see something doesn't mean that you can't use inductive reasoning to prove that it exists. And I'm applying that to God. Just because
Well,
we can't see God, or just because we can't see him the same way that we see material things, doesn't mean he exists. And then the reasons for the existence of God, like the transcendental argument, back him up. Like, I don't know if you're an atheist or if you're like an agnostic or what, but even things like morality, like that's not physical either. It's not, but it's not like abstract. It's concrete. But how do you account for something like morality?
I mean,
Like,
honestly, I know when I do something wrong. I'll be honest with you. I know that might sound corny to you. I don't know, if you feel that way, but I even see kids, children, like outright cry. The other day, well, not the other day, but like a couple months ago, a kid in a little party that we had, he took something, like, and I knew he took it. He was scared. He didn't want to admit it, but I could tell that he knew he did something wrong. So that's why he felt ashamed of trying to like hide it, that he didn't take it. I told him, you're not in trouble. Don't worry about it. We love you. You good. Kids do things like that. Just don't do it again. Don't touch what's not yours. But the whole thing
but then I
was,
guess,
he knew
sorry, go
though.
ahead.
It was built into the little boy. Is what I'm saying, that he knew
Okay,
something
good.
he did wrong. Without
Perfect.
scripture.
So, so,
Without scripture.
perfect. Thank you. So I will agree with you. We don't need God to be moral. I'm going to say it one more time. We don't need God to be moral. We only need God to justify our morality. So what do I mean by that? Everybody knows, like you said, that unaliving or theft and things like this,
Sorry.
it's wrong. We know that. But how do you justify that? For instance, what if the little boy said, you know what? I actually think this was a good thing that I stole this. What would you have said to him?
I would have told him, I would have educated him on how society works. You understand what I'm saying? We don't take what doesn't belong to us. Society is not even, society has its own set of rules, and you got to live in this world, whether or not you agree with it or not, but at least let you know how the world works, young man. You know what I'm saying? And that's what
Well,
I
that's
would
a
say.
fallacy.
You're going to make your own
That's called
choice
the
at the
ad
end of the day,
populum.
right? I
No, no,
mean,
no, no.
he
I
is going to do
understand,
that,
but
right?
that's a no, no, no. I get it, but what you just exhibited was a fallacy. It's called the ad populum fallacy. Appeal to the population of people, or appeal to a group, and that the minority is wrong. But 150 years ago, for us as Black people, it was the morally right thing to do according to society to hang us.
That's wrong.
So
I think it will always be wrong to do that. And I think people back
okay,
then
but
felt that
hold
way
on,
too.
but hold on. Based on what you just said, but notice now, notice the reductio. Based on what you just said, if we're going to appeal to what society says, then when society says the opposite, you have to be consistent and appeal to society there.
I hear you, but here's the thing, right? Sometimes something could be just what it is, right? Sometimes something could just be what it is. Like telling a little boy, you know, he might get into some trouble in the future if he takes something that's not his, is not quite literally exactly the same thing as what you're touching on, which I understand that, in a
No,
societal
Jay,
view.
what he's
Well,
saying
go
is
ahead.
what he's saying is that you may get morality right in certain cases because of what you said, that little boy taking, and he just knew he was wrong, right? That actually follows along with the Torah, by the way. Like we agree with that. That's the natural law. We were created in His image, therefore we're gonna have we're gonna have a understanding innately as to what is right or wrong in certain things. But how do we? What Amin is saying is, how do we properly justify what is, like, when we are feeling the morality? How do we know what is properly right or wrong? In order to get a justification, you need something objective, and we would say that's God. You disagreed and you said, well, society will tell us, but society will be fallible in a lot of cases. Which in this case, he brought up the racism in America. Society at one point thought that was the right thing to do, and we know that's not, right?
Not
So
yet, for
if you're
sure.
using society as the measure or as the objective standard as to what is morally correct, you're going to fail. It's not infallible. So
Like
therefore it's subjective
I'm
to
not
the opinions of the people.
I'm not trying to use society to like establish that. I guess what I was trying to relay to the little boy is that because we do live here now in this day, so I'm just letting him know that there are consequences for actions like that. And if we were around back then, and if that was still something that could possibly happen back then, I would have probably even been more on them because society's still doing that. It's more of a warning, like, look, things can happen as a result of that, more so than me saying, listen to society, follow
But what? But
society.
if I'm that little
Okay,
boy and
but
I'm like, if
notice
I'm that little boy and I'm like, but how do I know you're right on that? Like, how do? What if I disagree with you?
ex-
Then
ex-
what?
That's fine. Then you're
exactly,
gonna,
and that's the
then just like I
question. And
told him, he got to learn his lesson. Sorry, go ahead.
with Jay, but that's the reason why I'm bringing this up, because essentially what you're saying is your morality, your virtue ethics, they're not grounded in anything. They're subjective. So because they're subjective, this is what you believe the little boy should do, but you're not an arbiter of morality. You're not an arbiter of truth where this is concerned. That's just your opinion. And what we're saying is morality, we're not the arbiters of morality. God is. The same thing with, and this goes with, I'm not going to jump, but I really want to finish this, but I'm just giving you something to think about too. The same thing even goes with logic, the laws of logic. You realize that even without God, you can't even give an account for logic.
I mean,
Like,
I don't know about that.
this is what I'm saying. From your position, this is so detrimental,
Yeah, it
and you
is.
just don't understand or realize how.
The other thing is too, like, you have an expectation for us to prove God scientifically, tangibly, and you hold us to this what we would say is not a proper criteria of proving God. But you want those type of, you want that as the objective standard. But then when we ask you things about morality, you're completely okay with just saying it's, I'm just going to state my opinion. You don't need to
No,
ground it in anything, and
no, it's not. I'm sorry.
that's
Go ahead.
inconsistent.
Okay, so to touch on that, right? I'm not like asking you for a requirement of God. I'm telling you that why I feel how I feel
Oh
regarding
man.
it. Like I know that you're gonna feel how you feel. It's your book. You believe in that. You understand what I'm saying? I don't expect you not to believe in him after our conversation. When I say that, I'm just trying to inform you on my stance and why I think how I think. It's still always gonna be a book that's rooted by man and man's words. You said it yourself. It has to be poetry because it's an
No,
interpretation,
that's not what we're
right?
saying. No, like, no. Okay, look, that's not what we're saying. We're not saying because our book says it, therefore it must be true, and that's just what we believe. No, remember, and this is why I prefaced our conversation with epistemology, because it's not about just because a book says it, we should believe it. I mean, everybody believes that about a lot of different things, but it's
Mhm.
about what is more reasonable to believe, what is more probable through induction, and if possible through deduction. Most of
Mhm.
everything is going to be through induction anyway, so that's not a problem for us. And what we're saying is the Christian worldview, specifically the Orthodox worldview, is the only worldview that can give an account for things like morality, for things like logic, for things like virtue ethics, for all of those transcendentals that are not physical. Only our worldview, and I know it sounds exclusionary, but sometimes things are exclusionary. If I say 2 plus 2 is 4, and 3 plus 2 is not 4, it doesn't mean I'm being a mean or a bad person.
I get
That's
you.
just the way things are. Things are naturally exclusionary. So what I'm saying here is I'm asking you a question prior to argumentation. How do you know that your worldview can account for these things outside of yourself? What do you ground these things in outside of you? That's the question we're asking.
Well, I mean, like obviously I'm not a brain surgeon. I don't got machines that could study the brain and I wouldn't even know how to do that, right? But I would like heavily put belief into whatever brain science can tell me about a person. And I'm pretty sure that there would be a lot of neurological similarities between people who commit the same type of actions or, like the brain has a lot to do
But
with
that
why
doesn't give
people
us
do
an
what they
answer.
do. You understand?
I'm sorry for interrupting you. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but
No problem.
you're not getting what I'm asking. That's the mechanism in which these things happen, but it doesn't tell us if these things are right or wrong.
Yeah,
You understand what I'm
and I can,
asking?
and look, we can demonstrate as to like brain scans and stuff like that won't account for any of this stuff because, for example, the law of non-contradiction is a concept that exists that governs our reality, meaning that we cannot contradictions cannot exist in our reality. So a squared circle cannot be made. Would you agree with that, Jay?
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Okay. So this concept we know existed prior to the human mind. So even before humans were around, this concept existed. Where did that like how do you ground the justification of that concept existing? How do you explain that? A
I
brain
mean,
scan won't matter because humans don't exist, but the concept still did. So how do you explain that?
well, that's the thing. Like when you say that humans weren't around, are you saying that in the context of the Bible?
In context, yeah. I mean, there was a point in time where the world existed and humans didn't. Even our creation story would have account for that. So before a human mind, if the law of non-contradiction still existed, how do you justify it existing without a human mind?
The thing is, if I answered that question generally, it'd be different than if I answered it through the context of the Bible, which is why I asked you.
Just answer
Because
it by from your worldview. How do you explain it?
from my worldview, believing in science, it's like there was no scriptures at a certain point in
Bro,
time, and
forget
there
the
was humans
scriptures, dude.
everywhere.
Forget the scriptures. Scriptures have nothing to do with the law of non-contradiction. How did the
But
law of non-contradiction exist prior to a human mind?
the law of non-contradiction, how did that exist prior to the human mind? I mean, I honestly, I'm trying to like make sense of the question. You understand? I'm trying to
Okay,
like,
so basically what he's saying is this. Look. So he's saying this. If you were to die right now, God forbid, but if you were to die
yeah,
right now, would the law of non-contradiction still exist?
I don't know what happened to my consciousness. Maybe I go to an alternative Earth.
Dude.
I don't know. You know,
Dude,
string
I don't,
theory.
I
Have
don't
you ever
know.
heard of that?
Dude, I don't,
Have you?
do you understand what the law of non-contradiction is?
No, I don't. That's why I was confused when
Okay,
you asked
all
me
right.
just now.
The law of non-contradiction is a universal law of logic, all right? We know this. Even atheists would agree that this is true. So what a law of non-contradiction is, it says that contradictions can't exist. You know what a contradiction is, right?
Yeah, like you say something and then something that goes against it can't exist.
Right. Or a squared circle. Like you can't have
Yeah.
one shape that is a square and a circle at the same time.
Facts.
It's impossible. You and I can come together and go to kingdom come, okay? And we can try to invent a squared circle. It won't be possible. Would you agree?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Under that
that is
context, yes.
because that's because there is a law of logic called the law of non-contradiction. It governs our reality. It literally does not allow for a contradiction to even exist. Okay?
Yeah.
We know contradictions. Squared circles weren't floating around in the air before human beings. So the law of non-contradiction had to have existed. Now, the law of non-contradiction is a concept. It's not something you can touch, feel, smell, weigh. It's abstract. It exists in our minds. But if at one point humans did not exist and the law of non-contradiction did, how do you explain that from your worldview? How do you explain how that still existed?
Well, I mean, and you're probably not gonna like my answer. That's cool if you don't. But honestly, science tells us about a lot of forces at hand and materials like electrons, atoms, neurons,
Dude,
everything that
Science,
comes
you
but
together.
gotta demonstrate it still though. Whatever it is your
yeah,
explanation is going to be, you got to science just doesn't say, well, yeah, we could maybe prove it in the future, but then don't. Like
No,
there's a
they have
hypothesis here. You got to prove it.
they have
science is
though,
the
and
mechanism
yeah, sorry.
again, science is the mechanism in which we filter data. That's all it is, because it's ran by scientists, but it doesn't tell us how something like it basically what we're asking is, how do you get an is from an ought? Do you understand what I'm asking? Like this is the is ought distinction. So for instance, it is the case that logic exists outside of your mind. Before all humans existed, it is the case that logic existed. But now you have to be able to justify why we ought to believe that science or whatever can account for that outside of God. That's the is ought distinction. Like, it is the case that unaliving is wrong. It is the case why theft is wrong. It is the case why grape is wrong. But why ought we to believe that? That's what we're
Well,
asking. This is questions prior to argumentation.
the thing is, I think, and my apologies for this because I should have came out with this in the beginning. I think there's a misconception here between us. I think you guys think that I don't believe in a God. I believe in something, but I just don't think that it's anything you're gonna find in scripture. That's all it is. You understand what I'm saying?
No, but
So
that goes against the law of non, but then it goes back to Bear's question. Now you're stuck with the law of non-contradiction. Because then what do you do when you have a God like the Abrahamic God? Then you have a God like the Hindu God that you find written in the Vedas. And they have this idea of polytheism, but the Abrahamic faith doesn't. That contradicts. Or what do you even do with something like in Islam, where you have the God of the Quran and you have the God of the Bible, and in the Quran, God says Jesus was not crucified. It was made to appear that he wasn't really crucified. They didn't unalive him. He was. But then you go to the Bible and there's copious amounts of scriptures that say Jesus was crucified. He definitely was crucified. So now you have two gods contradicting each other. Now you're stuck again. Now you're right back at square one. And now it's a question of epistemology. Why do you believe what you believe? What are the reasonings as to why you believe what you believe? If you're going to be consistent, you use it for everything else. But then when it comes to God, you don't use the same tools, logical reasoning, and processes to
No,
figure out inductively what God is
that's what
true.
And the
that's
reasons
what
and
I
the reasons
okay.
can't
Go
be
ahead.
and the reasons can't be, Jay, oh, I read the Old Testament and I don't like it. Like that may be the reason why you choose to live your life the way you do, and no one can stop you there, but that wouldn't be a proper justification given to like epistemology. That wouldn't follow.
Well, well, the thing is, right? It just strikes me odd that all powerful deity that could create not just
Here we
us
go.
here on the earth and the universe, right? But he could create everything. He could create literally everything, all the forces, everything inside. But he needs dead carcasses to be donated to him or like tributed to him. Why would
But
he
that's
do
but
that?
There
that's
we
another
go.
but
It's
that's
you did
another
exactly what I
but
said
that's a
don't do.
fallacy.
You did
Exactly.
No, but
exactly what I said.
no.
Don't that's not gonna
What
justify
And
it.
I'll give
what
you
I'm saying, Bear, is that I could see
and
the
I'll give you
human
the name
behind
of
that.
the fallacy. I'll
I
I'll
could see the
I'll, I'll
human
give you the
behind that.
name of the fallacy. Yeah, I'll give you the name of the fallacy so that you can go and look it up. It's called the personal incredulity fallacy. Just because something doesn't make sense to you, therefore it's not true. I'm
No,
more than
that's not what I'm
sure,
saying.
and I'm not saying
That's
this.
exactly what you're doing, dude.
That's exactly what you're saying.
I can tell you how I'm not. Now that we on the topic before it drags along, like now that we here, I could tell you how I'm not. I'm literally just going according to what the thing says. The thing says what it
Here,
says.
let me read. Let
You
me
know,
read the. Let me read the definition. So, because you're saying no, we're gonna put. We're not. We're gonna pull out receipts. The personal
Gotcha.
incredulity fallacy occurs when a person dismisses an argument or idea as false simply because they find it difficult to believe or understand, rather than refuting it with evidence. It is
no,
incorrect. It is the incorrect assumption that if something is hard for them to imagine it, it must not be true. This fallacy is a failure to engage with the evidence, instead relying on a person's personal limits of comprehension. It's literally
Yep.
describing what you're saying.
well, I'm grateful for you putting me on to that because I'm gonna use that term going forward. I don't think I was using. I was doing that. I was simply just observing it for what it says. It says what it says. I'm not saying that it's just difficult for me to believe, and that's why I don't believe it. I'm saying that it makes more sense to me that a human being who's hungry, who is not
According
very
to
literate
who?
like us
Yeah,
in
According to
science,
according
you
to
know.
who?
according to
Because we
you, dude.
believe it.
No, I'm
Because
saying
we
you.
believe it and you don't. So who's right?
And it
No,
also
no,
says
I
to
hear you.
believe and understand rather than refuting it with evidence. What's the evidence that this is wrong, dude?
What
If you're
what
not committing this fallacy, you need to provide evidence as to why it's wrong.
what can justify to you killing your son via stoning him? Like would you
Brother,
do that?
brother, you need to justify why it's wrong. Yeah, if I live
That's
back then,
why.
I would do it. Now what? Now what are you gonna say?
Hell no, heck no.
Exactly. It's just rhetoric. You don't have evidence, dude. All
Now
you're
what I'm
doing is
telling you is
you're now what you're
my
doing now.
evidence is my
Let me show you
choice
another
in this
fallacy you're
moment.
doing. Hold on. Let me show you another fallacy you're doing. This is called an appeal to emotion fallacy. So here, let
I
me
heard of
read you
that
another
one before.
fallacy. Here.
I heard of that one before, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
okay, good. The appeal to emotion fallacy occurs when someone uses emotional manipulation rather than logical reasoning or factual evidence to persuade an audience.
I'm
This
not trying to
fallacy
do that.
explodes emotions such as fear, pity, or pride to bypass rational thought and sway opinions, making it common in advertising, politics, and personal arguments.
That's what I think scripture does. And I'm telling you, like I'm
Okay,
telling you
bro,
what I
prove
would
it.
do.
Prove it.
It's
Prove,
telling you
prove,
it's
prove
telling
that
you
scripture with evidence, not with fallacies, that it's wrong. Prove
it's
it.
telling you you'll burn in hell for eternity if you don't
Okay,
listen.
why is that wrong? Why is that wrong?
Why even go, like you could have just rested for 7 days. You didn't
Hey,
have to
I'm
make us
waiting.
and put
I'm
us
waiting.
through this
I don't want to
trial.
know what you think could have been better in your opinion. I wanted. What's the evidence? You said you weren't doing a personal incredulity fallacy. It says they're
Okay,
refuted with evidence,
fair
not
point,
with your
fair
own
point.
personal understanding. So go ahead
Evidence.
and what's the evidence that that's wrong? That you would burn in hell if you reject God.
Well, what's the evidence that burning in hell for rejecting God is wrong?
All right, bro.
I
That's why you
think
got
that
kicked out before. Kick rocks, bro. See you later,
15.
bro.
Yeah.
That's why I kicked you out earlier. Because of that. Just dumb, dude. Just dumb.
Yep.
That's why you got booted out earlier. Nice, respectful conversation most of the time, but that's why I booted you out earlier. That right there. You got called out. We showed it explicitly with evidence that you were committing fallacy after fallacy. You admitted you saw it, and then you said you're not doing it, and you proceed to do exactly what it says that you're doing after denying it blatantly. Like I put it up on the screen. Everybody on YouTube saw it. I read the definition to everybody on TikTok. We all heard the definition, and we saw you continue to do it after you gaslight us into saying that you did not do it or you're not doing it. Craziness, man.
It's tough, bro. And this is why I think he came up, because he heard us talking about this and was like, no, it's not that simple. No, it actually quite is that simple. Without God, you have no ways of grounding anything you believe in. This is why I keep trying to tell people this, man. Like, even Christians, you guys gotta read a book on epistemology. You've got to understand this. As Christians, we don't just believe it because our book says it. We have reasons that we can ground as to why we believe this. Now, the reductio, it's called reductio ad absurdum, contrary basically to basically what reductio ad absurdum is. Believing in the contrary would be absurd. So, like,
yeah,
how
you're showing through a line of questioning the absurdity of holding a position that it doesn't hold. Yeah,
exactly. And that's and what we just like exhibited for the past 30 minutes with Jay was the entailment of the reductio ad absurdum. Yeah. Was the exhibit of absurdity to the contrary. And it's just sad, but it goes back to cognitive dissonance. Yeah. Most of the time, people just never have heard these arguments.
And that's it too, cognitive dissonance as well. And by the way, Jay, I'll give you the definition of cognitive dissonance, because I'm going to show you what you're doing. I did this to a Muslim the other day. He at least was willing. He actually was a nice Muslim, willing to listen. But I said it really nicely to him that he has cognitive dissonance at this point. And this is what you have as well. So here's the definition of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the psychological discomfort experienced when a person holds two or more conflicting beliefs, values, or attitudes, or when their behavior clashes with their beliefs. To reduce this internal tension, people often change their beliefs, justify their actions, or ignore the conflicting information to restore consistency. It's literally what you were doing, to the point where I said, you're gaslighting us into saying that you're not committing this fallacy. And this is a comment that he puts in, on YouTube right after. I didn't gaslight anything. I was telling you my stance. After we repeatedly said, we already know your stance. We don't want your opinion. We want evidence. And you're literally saying right here, you're justifying by saying, I was giving you my stance or my opinion, in other words. And we keep telling you we don't want to hear that. We want to hear evidence of your opinion or your stance. So the fact that you even put this comment shows the cognitive dissonance. You're not even hearing what we're asking you anymore, dude. Completely just cognitive dissonance. You heard us say, tell us your stance. We know your stance already. We were asking you to justify your stance, and you refused to do it. You wanted to give us your opinions as if that's evidence, and it's not. That is a personal incredulity fallacy.